What's going on, Frame?
I found my webcam. Now, I know you read the title of this and you're probably thinking to yourself, is that really what he looks like? Yes. Hopefully, I can answer another question that I've been thinking about for a very long time. And I think you might actually be surprised to hear what I think about this. And I'll be the first to say it's just my opinion, but I think I've been able to identify some key issues with PvP. PvP used to be a very fundamental experience to RuneScape. So much so that players would just go PKing with any stats they had, even if it didn't make sense. It was seen as not only a great way to have fun, but also a great way to earn some extra GP. There still, of course, was bossing back in the day, and a lot of people did that too. It was fun, but realistically, I sucked at bossing, okay? I was probably like 11 or something.
We all did.
I didn't know how to boss. All I really knew how to do, which was kind of considered endgame, was PvP. Most of my friends who played RuneScape back in the day would all agree that PvP was a fundamental experience to RuneScape. Now, in the current year, basically none of them have any interest in PvP, and they
Is he saying we need to all go back to sucking again? If we can all go back to being bad at the game, it'll make it more fun for everyone.
Haven't for years. These days, there's very few players who actually want to go PKing themselves, and that's not really a secret. With interest in PvP dwindling over the years and the skill gap between new players and experienced players growing ever larger, PvP has been slowly dying off in RuneScape. And that just begs the question, nearly 13 years after the release of old school RuneScape, is PvP worth putting any time into, and dare I say, is it worth saving? But actually, I need to tell you about something else really cool first. I think you're gonna love it. Okay. It's Assassin's Creed in Raid Shadow Legends. You remember Ezio, right? We all loved him. That's not him. Raid Shadow Legends just got 5 iconic assassins from the Assassin's Creed franchise. Ezio, Edward Kenway, Bayek, Basim, and Cassandra. They've all joined Raid Shadow Legends as legendary champions for a limited time, and players can get Ezio for free by logging into the game for 7 days. Aside from doing the Ezio chase event to acquire him, you can also do different events to acquire the other assassins. There's also the new event dungeon and
chat, has anybody played Raid Shadow Legends in their life? Maybe the Raid Shadow Legends sponsor ties into what is gonna fix RuneScape PvP. Maybe it ties in. You never know.
PvP back in the day used to be something that everyone took part in, at least every now and then. There were so many active spots to PK in the wilderness, like Edgeville, the West Dragons, the East Dragons, you had the middle of the Wilderness Dragons, you had Anakarl, you had the Mage Bank, you had Varrock Multi, and you also had the Varrock Pub if you were a certain type of guy. You could go anywhere and find a fight and have the time of your 11-year-old life. Clan Wars were also popular back in the day too, not just to take part in, but it was also fun even if you weren't PKing, just to go as a newbie looter to see what you could get. The only real experience I did have with clanning back in the day was just following whoever was walking into the wilderness kind of deep in multi.
Dude,
and then
this is how we used to PK right here.
Be the one that was going to get attacked, and then
that was us.
You'd get to about here, and then they'd all turn on one guy, kill him.
Yeah, they'd say, some guy would say,
this is exactly how we PvP'd. We got in a group and we're like, yo, you want to PvP with us? All right, you're in our group. Let's go. We get 20 wilderness levels deep, and we just like, all right, let's just kill this guy. There's nobody out here. That's what we did.
Spoon. Yeah. And then the leader would die.
And I remember one time I was the leader, and I made it from here to about here, and then I got BS'd by everyone.
Like, people would like just kind of test an arrow on the leader just to see if everyone else would pop
yes.
on.
Yes.
And then we would have like a quick meeting. Like, all right,
they were BSing. Yeah.
The ecosystem of the wilderness was thriving back
I remember
then.
that.
Everyone from the gearless looters to the notorious clans to a guy in
He
full
BS'd
arms
me.
and a DDS looking to assassinate a new player who had no idea where they were. There were so many PvP legends at the time too, like Kidge Range, Elve Mage, I Mahatma I Soy I, and this guy, I guess, who just kind of threatened everyone for whatever reason. Now, I actually did have PKing videos of myself back in the day, but when I went from middle school to high school, I removed them because I didn't want people to find out that I played RuneScape, and instead, I uploaded videos of Call of Duty.
Okay.
Oh my god! Look at this kid, he's a chief! Oh, that was sick as hell.
The best PKers back in the day weren't 13 years old.
The audio quality was ass.
They were doing all the dishonorable teenage things like no honor PKing, T-beam people, PJing people.
Guys, everyone had the shittiest headset mic ever made back in early 2000. The stuff we use now is just diabetical in comparison.
Bringing barrages and forecasting, teleporting
turtle
when they were out of
beaches,
food.
bro.
To be honest, the bar was actually pretty low back then for what was dishonorable. No one knew about combo foods or one-tick DDSing or anything like that. It was mainly just a bunch of dumb kids who clicked the special attack bar 4 times and then told people that they were stupid if they were lucky to kill them. There really wasn't any established meta. There was no guides on how to PK, and there definitely wasn't a very high skill ceiling. Basically, anyone could get into PvP and most likely walk away with at least a few kills, and of course, a few deaths too, but nobody really cared back then. There was a simplistic charm to PKing, which played a big part in allowing so many players to take part in it. Of course, there were updates over the years that changed the PvP landscape, like the addition of the God Wars dungeon and all the items that came with it, like the Armadillo Godsword, but those things really only enhanced the PvP experience. And with every year that passed by, more players seemed to get interested in PvP, especially thanks to legends like Nightmare RH, Chris Archie, SparkMac, the list goes on. Even with the removal of PvP in the wilderness as well as free trade in 2008 and the addition of the Bounty Hunter Crater or the eventual PvP World release, PKing was still content that tons of players took part in, even with the weird ways that Jagex.
You guys realize all MMOs are having the same problem right now? WoW PvP is completely done. Nobody watches it. Nobody plays it. It's like a thing of the past. Maybe like 5% of the player base even tries it. It's just no one does it anymore. RuneScape seems to be a similar thing. I think it's just PvP and MMOs in general. PVM is just much better. It's like a much better content. And once you learn PVM, you get better at it. So, and you're like consistently beating it. So it feels more rewarding versus like PvP where no matter what, there's somebody better than you always. And so it's like, it would be like PVM where you're fighting a boss all day that you can't beat. And nobody would do that either. So it's like, why would you fight a boss all day that you can't beat? That's PvP.
Attempted to fix the risk versus reward aspect of PvP. The skill gap did, of course, continue to increase as time went on because we're not 11-year-old baby.
It's kind of like Triumphant versus Wave 8 Doom. You know what I mean? He's like, dude, he's never going to kill that. So that's kind of like what PvP is for everybody else.
Anymore, man. We're 15 years old now, and we're allowed to curse. Hybriding and tribriding was kind of always a thing back in the day, but it didn't really take off until around like 2010. That's kind of when the ability to get better started to increase from there on out, since now you could prove you were the best at PvP because you could click a bunch of armor really quick. Then eventually came things like high-risk fights starting to take place too, where you'd risk all of your items in a PvP match, and if you died, well, it didn't really matter at that point because Evolution of Combat came to RuneScape and then we all quit. Then, in 2013, Old School RuneScape came along, which I don't know how many of you guys played Old School RuneScape at its initial launch, but it was not that great. Aside from a lot of the jank that was on display in the rest of the game, you could no longer reliably hybrid PK since the engine was ass old. Everybody kind of just went back to being noobs again for a bit. Then, somewhere along the way, Jagex actually updated their engine to make it a bit smoother. So hybriding came back into the game along with high-risk fighting. Later, we'd eventually get the AGS, then Zulrich came out and introduced the new Venom mechanic, then eventually we get Dragon Claws with the new Offensive Prayers. All of these updates that would eventually help grow PvP even further. Over the years came more and more updates which brought new items into the game that not only changed the way you could PK, but changed the way you could create accounts to PK. With more
it seems like the more features and the more items that came into the game, the higher the skill gap got and the higher the barrier to entry gets for new players, which causes a divide in the player base where you just have a bunch of people at the very, very top that are good and everyone else is just prey. And it creates like this apex system of just like predator versus prey, and no one can beat the predators because they're just too good.
Updates in an ever-changing PvP meta came both old and new problems that would plague PvP for years, slowly killing off interest in it altogether. If you're enjoying this video so far, by the way, consider leaving a like and subscribing. This took a long time. Thank you. For starters, dying in the wilderness sucks. You know it, I know it, and my friend Jake knows it.
All right, who's this dumbass? All right, surely you're freaking kidding me, bro.
Ooh,
I hate this
in the
shit.
void.
I hate this shit.
Whenever you go into the wilderness, you know there's a chance you can die. It's what we all sign up for. Either
Yeah,
because we want to
true.
make some good GP or because we want to get a Void Waker on our Iron Man or something. Now let's pretend like Jagex.
Yeah, you could say that that's something that, you know, I did, and, you know, I did do that. I have that. He's talking about me.
Wants to release an update into the wilderness. Immediately when I hear that, I'm in two minds. The PKng side of me thinks, yeah, I would love a new update in the wilderness. But the PVMmer side of me kind of feels like I'm just going to be there to be.
Or a dragon pick too. All right, that's a 1 minute timeout. That's crazy. You'd say that.
bait for somebody else. Yeah, maybe I'll make good money in the process, but it doesn't mean that I'm not anything other than a loot pinata. Now, of course, I'm just gonna go into the wilderness. It's not a big deal for me. I've had bad experiences in the wilderness. I've had good experiences in the wilderness. But let's just say somebody had a few bad experiences in the wilderness. They just had a Slayer task, they had to go kill Earth Warriors, and there you go. Some asshole down there kills them. And maybe not only did they die, but they brought their entire cash stack or all of their runes on them, and they didn't even realize until it was too late. That person is probably not going to like the wilderness, and they're probably not going to want to vote yes to a single PvP update that gets them back into the wilderness. And at that point, you can't even necessarily blame them for feeling.
True, because every single person is like, yeah, anything with the wilderness, we're down voting it. We don't want any content out there ever. Nobody in my chat, especially, people hate the wilderness in this chat. I have not seen almost a single person who wants wilderness content or anything to do with it. They want the wilderness erased from the game. So I don't know how they're going to fix that.
Feeling that way. Now, of course, this is how the current ecosystem in the wilderness works, and it's worked like this for a very long time. PVMmer goes to a spot to make pretty easy money, noob PKer comes along trying to kill that PVMmer, and a good PKer then comes along trying to kill that noob PKer, and so on. I won't sit here and pretend like I haven't been along,
and he laughs at both of them.
Fitted from this system and that I don't enjoy it, because I do. But I think the problem between these two points of view is that there isn't anything connecting them. There isn't really any solid reason why someone who only wants the PVM would even attempt to counter PKers or just try PKing in general. Just because you stick a thing in the wilderness doesn't mean somebody automatically wants to go and just PK. Even if there was a solid reason to try to go and anti-PK that PKer, where do they even learn how to do this? Because currently, there is basically nothing in this game that teaches you how to anti-PK a PKer. Even if they did want to try to anti-PK, how are they going to learn? Like we already stated, dying blows. And if it's going to be a hard task to take down a PKer, even if you have some experience, then why would you even want to go into the wilderness at all? Nobody went into the wilderness back then to PVM or get collection logs. People were just there for the fun of the game. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that there isn't any place for wilderness updates. But in my opinion,
why did we go? What was anybody doing in the wilderness in 2001? It was just King Black Dragon and Runite ore. There was a rune ore deposit, and then there was just ganking, like just going around with a squad. PKng was just in game. It was just something you did whenever you needed something else to do. He's kind of cooking right here, saying, do we really need to force people to go into the wilderness with these items and these drop rates when they don't want to be there anyway? He could be cooking with this, but if we didn't force people, then would anybody even be there? Let's let him continue.
it's worth focusing on trying to get people to not only try to learn how to anti-PK, but to get them to want to actually actively take part in PKer versus PKer. That brings us to what I would consider to be the quintessential player versus player minigame. Bounty Hunter. I love Bounty Hunter. It's a great minigame in my opinion. It gives PKers a good way to make pretty good GP if you're decent enough. The rewards themselves are pretty self-contained, and it's purely just PKers versus PKers with a lot of the BS taken out, like forecasting, overhead prayers, and teleporting away just because your opponent hits a big number. This update is great, but it took Jagex 9 years to get it right. Let's go into a bit of a history, shall we? The initial concept for Bounty Hunter was released in 2007 in RuneScape 2 as the Bounty Hunter craters. These craters were brutal, but honestly, they were pretty great. After 2 years went by, they were changed from the Bounty Hunter crater to Bounty Hunter worlds, and once again, they took place in the wilderness. Fast forward to 2014, where Bounty Hunter was released in old school RuneScape. The initial game mode was fun for a while, and it did have some quirks, but for the most part, it was pretty solid. There was the occasional quality of life update here and there, but PvP really wasn't seeing many updates at all for quite some time. Despite this though, PvP was still very active in old school, even with PvPers being desperate for literally any updates at all. After a long 5-year wait, Jagex decided to overhaul Bounty Hunter by removing the mysterious emblems you got from killing your target and replacing it with a point system instead. In addition, they added new features like Bounty Hunter tasks and hotspots for additional points, and loot crates that were added to the reward shop to give PKers an extra incentive to go PK for that loot. This was a pretty good idea in theory, but without any willingness to moderate boosting, it quickly became more about cheating the Bounty Hunter system than actually taking part in it. To combat this, Jagex added a minimum requirement of 48 hours of
That's naturally just like the process of video games nowadays. Is just like they'll come up with a system, is what they call it in a game design. There'll be systems. So there's a bounty hunter system where you do bounty hunter, you get points, you get rewards. And the rewards are there to incentivize you to do it. But the problem with rewards is that people will try to cheat to get the rewards faster. And then people start to cheat the systems. And then you incorporate terms like boosting and carrying and selling carries. And that's the same systematic problems that are happening in WoW and MMOs. People just always try to abuse it, no matter how what you do. And then if you're not going to police the system that you introduce into the game, then people are going to abuse it forever. And so you need some kind of like a police system for your systems before you release them, or at least think about the ways that people are gonna abuse it.
In-game playtime, along with 20 quest points and a 40 combat requirement to bounty hunter, as well as making it so it takes you a longer time to get a target. Then, because that obviously didn't work, Jagex temporarily disabled bounty hunter for 2 months after it was updated, only to re-enable it 3 months later, changing absolutely nothing about it, only for it then to be nerfed 2 months after being re-enabled, for it to then be gutted and replaced with an extremely watered down version that gives you literally nothing. Nothing. Needless to say, that killed the minigame in its entirety. 3 years later, Bounty Hunter finally returned, and while there definitely were similar issues with boosting, Jagex finally put a stop to it by making it so boosting and Bounty Hunter was a bannable offense.
There you go.
It took Jagex 9 years after updating Bounty Hunter and changing it 8 times to basically realize that they had it right in 2014. And that's just Bounty Hunter. There's of course still the Wilderness and of course PvP worlds, which all 3 actually suffered from one of the longest standing issues plaguing PvP.
A lot of times they get it right on the first time. They just don't have anybody policing it. And there has to be like real people sitting there banning bots and people that are doing this in the game. Like there needs to be player mods. Like we just need player mods and the full-time player mods in MMOs that are just banning people all day long. You know, you can tell, you can see where the bots are at. You can see where the bots are at. You go into LMS for one game, you know where the bots are. You know what I mean? Like they're there. So you need player mods that are like actively just banning people. I don't know what else to do. Otherwise, bots are just always going to be there and people abusing stuff.
PvP ragging. For those that don't know, ragging is where a player attacks you with the intention of stopping you from engaging in combat with anybody else. Anyone who has PK'd for long enough has encountered this issue. Obviously, the goal of ragging is to harass the person they're ragging to not PK anymore, and unfortunately, it's an extremely effective tool, especially in PvP worlds. This is what Varrock looked like in PvP worlds before ragging was prevalent. Here it is again 2 years later when it started to become more of an issue. And then again, another 2 years later, where it was completely dead. Ragging did eventually become a bannable offense, but by the time that happened, it was too little too late. And most people who were getting constantly hit every time they wanted to fight back just decided to stop going to PvP worlds. There is still a community of people that PK in PvP worlds, which is great, but it is nowhere near as populated as it once was. Maybe it's a bit unfair to blame it all on ragging, but a good number of people I've spoken to who PK in PvP worlds have all basically pointed towards ragging being one of the biggest reasons why these worlds aren't anywhere near as active as they once were. There are of course other issues like people using cheat clients to PK too, which definitely did not help the problem. And no, of course I didn't forget about Deadman mode, but comparing Deadman mode to PvP is kind of like comparing Coca-Cola to Pepsi. You could say they taste the same, but you'd kind of be lying to yourself. They're just 2 entirely different flavors of PvP. As far as I'm concerned with Deadman mode, that's a temporary game mode that doesn't really interact with the main game's PvP at all. I would also argue that Deadman mode is a game mode designed for a very specific type of player. In fact, I could honestly make an entire video on Deadman mode with just how much I have to say about it, since it's almost never been smooth sailing until recently. But maybe that's a video for another time. Or potentially never. Of course, there have been changes made to the Wilderness 2 in all of this time, the biggest and the best one in my opinion being how the PJ timer works in single weight combat. You used to be able to hit players that weren't being attacked back, but that changed in 2002, which again, I think is an update for the better. It's not like Jagex hasn't tried over the years to fix these issues in PvP, but it's never really seemed to be their priority. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it should take top priority, but with the lack of updates and integrity changes made to PvP, fewer PKers have been coming back to PvP year after year. After 13 years of being put on the back burner, trying to save PvP feels like a lost cause. PvP is no longer one of the core elements of RuneScape like it used to be. The PVM side of RuneScape is now the core element at play, and to be quite honest, Jagex has done an incredible job with it over the past few years, since it's just a
PVM
different
is just
beast
better
altogether. It's where the developers have the freedom to create new content and expand the game. There's a clear progression system that they can design. I think Savix, one of the WoW players that came over, put it best when he said,
I think PvP PvP and MMOs are super fun. It's just the devs kind of forget about you because PVM is a little bit, I almost want to say it's easier to balance because you don't see any monsters complain like, hey, that guy's too strong or that item's too strong, and they cry about it, right?
You can start your experience off killing Obor, and with enough dedication can later end up with an Infernal Cape. There's clear progression points that teach you how to PVM in RuneScape with things like Scurvius, Royal Titans, and even the invocation system for the Tombs of a Masket. For a new player hopping into PvP for the first time, it's like starting the experience with the hardest bosses. There's no progression where you learn about the subtle techniques that the few remaining PKers have developed over the years. Yes, of course, there is Last Man Standing, which does give players a risk-free way of learning PvP, but you have to spend hundreds of hours getting your ass handed to you with no clear way of how you can even improve.
This is my thing. I've put so many hours into trying to get, like, decent at this, and I am still dog shit, bro.
Are you talking about LMS?
Yes, dude, LMS, but just like LMS is PKing. Like, I have played probably 1,500 games of LMS, and I'll still lose to guys that come in with vengeance and just leave their computer and go eat a sandwich.
You don't feel as though you've learned in the 1,500 games you've played?
That's the crazy thing, is I have learned. It just didn't help. I don't understand, bro. Like, people are just so good.
I ain't gonna lie. After Dead Man mode and doing some dueling arena, like, if you want to get good at PvP, just go to the dueling arena and just non-stop duel all day. You do that for like 2-3 weeks, you're gonna be a demon. I'm telling you. LMS is decent, but the dueling arena, especially if you can find somebody kind of like right on your level and just duel that guy over and over and over. You know what I mean? Because LMS is too, either got a bot that doesn't swap that doesn't even pray overhead, or you got this demon mode Terminator guy and you don't even get a hit on him. It's too peaks and valley. You got to go to the dueling arena. You got to find somebody on your level. You got to say, hey, let's cook together. Let's win. You know, that's how you get better. But that being said, that can be tough to find somebody that's around on your level. So I understand. But a lot of people just don't want to get better. So there's that too.
So if some PKers don't feel like returning to PvP because it isn't as active as it once was, and new players don't feel like trying out PvP because it's really hard to get into, what's the solution here? Is there even a solution? A few years ago during one of Jagex's game jams, a handful of J-mods introduced the idea of a wilderness expansion. And while I do think a lot of it was cool, I didn't necessarily agree with everything proposed. One of the coolest things I liked about their idea though was the introduction of a new safe town in the wilderness where all of the Fremeniks set up shop. This would have been backed by in-game lore as well. This is where I'd like to start off with the basis for my potential solution. Bring in this town, not necessarily in the same spot in the wilderness, but you can give this town a few activities to do, a few shops and such, but most importantly, give it a brand new minigame. LMS did have the right idea to try to teach people how to PK, but that's kind of like the equivalent of getting your newborn toddler swimming lessons and then pushing them in the deep end right away, expecting them to swim. They're gonna die. A new PvP game mode that would teach a player the basics of PvP, in my opinion, would be one of the best ways to introduce it to those who want to learn. We're gonna call this minigame the Proving Grounds. You can start this minigame by talking to one of the residents of this new town who will tell you that they've made a training ground on a nearby island to test their might in combat and ask you if you want to take on their challenge. If you accept, you'll be told that you can't bring any items along with you and your items will be stored for you once you get back. The mechanic would work similar to LMS in the way that it gives you a new inventory and setup along with boosted stats in the minigame, and once you leave the minigame, your old inventory and stats goes back to normal. Once you take the boat out to this island, you'll be dropped into the new starting area where you'll be given a simple gear setup with all 3 attack styles as well as some food and potions. You'll also be defaulted to the ancient spellbook. The Proving Grounds will be a wave-based minigame that has the goal of slowly teaching you how to PvP by introducing you to different aspects of PvP one wave at a time. Now, of course, this minigame wouldn't need to be this exact layout, but it kind of gives the structure of what a minigame like this could be. Wave 1 would start off simple. A few Fremeniks will come up to you with different attack styles, and your job is to defeat them. If you let all of these different Fremeniks come up to you and start hitting you, you're going to take a lot of damage, but you can of course counter this by freezing them and dealing with them one by one. Once you defeat them, they all have the chance to drop either potions, food, or maybe gear upgrades. After Wave 1 ends comes Wave 2, and this time some of these Fremeniks have overhead prayers. Not a big deal, of course, since you just have to switch your attack style and then you just kill them with the correct attack style. Moving on to Wave 3, some of these Fremeniks have overhead prayers, and some of them actually switch gear setups, just like in PvP. Of course, there would be a visual indicator that they have switched their gear, so you know exactly what to pray against. This wave teaches you not only how to switch your gear, but but also how to switch your prayers as well, which is exactly what you'd be doing in PvP. If you manage to make it to wave 4, not only are these Fremeniks switching between all 3 attack styles, but they're also switching between all of their prayers, noticing what you're using against them. If you manage to defeat wave 4, you'll be facing off against an elite Dagannoth that switches between all 3 attack styles. You can't actually kill this Dagannoth. The entire goal is to just sit there and tank and get your prayers correctly for about a minute or so until it runs out of attacks. The main goal that this wave is trying to teach you is how to properly tank in a PvP situation. If you manage to defeat that wave, you'll move on to wave 6, which will have you dealing with not only this same elite Dagannoth, but now Fremeniks. So you're not only going to have to tank, but also deal damage at the same time. That then brings you to wave 7, the final wave, which will have the chieftain of this town come out and fight you. This fight will be pretty difficult since the chieftain not only has all 3 attack styles, but he will also have the ability to recognize what.
This also fills a gap of what I was looking for to test end game PvP earlier in the game in some type of simulated environment where people can see what end game is truly like. Like PvP kind of shows you how difficult the game can be with people swapping their gear and their overheads at the same time, and you're trying to do that too, but it can be a bit too much. But this would show you like in-game style PvP, like the what's the name of the guy in Gothic Sleeps, the elemental, the elemental boss. He was probably like one of the hardest ones in the game, where he was changing his overhead prayer and then he was also changing his attack. The balance elemental. The balance elemental needs to just be like that should just be this guy. The balance elemental. Like earlier on in the game, where you could go and see someone that's changing their offensives and their defenses, and then you're fighting, and you can kind of just get better at the game earlier on. I would love that.
What type of weapon you're using on him and switch accordingly. Not only does the chieftain have the ability to freeze and step under you, but he also has access to healing food, meaning that you'll either have to run him out of food or KO him. The chieftain will also have a special attack weapon that, if you aren't careful, will one-hit KO you. If you manage to pray correctly against this though, you will completely nullify the damage. Again, the PvP training minigame would not have to look like this. This is just a suggestion of what it could look like. Upon defeating this
there are very few bosses in the game that would eat or like heal up when you're fighting them. So this is kind of a cool concept.
Final wave, you'll be booted out of the minigame and given enough points depending on how far you made it in the minigame, which you can spend at the Proving Ground shop for a bunch of different PvP related items. As for the rewards that you can get from this shop, I came up with a few different ideas, although obviously this could be entirely changed. First and foremost, there's already a handful of blighted items in the game, like blighted food, blighted teleport sacks, blighted ice barrages. You could just add those to the shop very easily. The shop would also, of course, have a rune pouch, so you don't have to just go to LMS if you want to get a rune pouch the fastest way. There would also be a few new items in this shop. There could be blighted super combat potions, which are super combat potions that can only be used in PvP. Blighted Saradomin brews, which again are the same thing. There could be new blighted sacks as well, which are added to this shop, which are an entangle as well as a teleblock combined into one. There could also be 2 new sets of armor added to this shop that are only usable in the wilderness. Both of these sets of armor are always kept on deck, but you use GP to charge them. The first armor up is offensive armor, which would have pretty good accuracy and pretty good strength, kind of like in the middle of Bandos and Torva. The defensive stats in this armor would be very bad though, effectively making this a glass cannon build. So any player who gets attacked by someone who is using this armor would have a very easy time dealing damage against that PKer. The second set of armor can be defensive armor, again only usable in the wilderness, and it would lie somewhere between the defenses of Barrows as well as Justiciar. Once more, you can charge this defensive gear with GP, and it's not lost upon
I like the
death.
idea of
Those
PV armor.
A few rewards that you could have in this shop. You could have a whole PvP theme to this town, since it would be in the wilderness.
If it gives Iron Man a reason to like go get this gear so they can wear it in the wilderness and they don't have to lose, they're not gonna have to risk their gear. This is pretty cool.
and you can even make it so it's not accessible from the wilderness. Honestly, as far as whether you can access the wilderness, I would leave that up to the JMods or to you guys if you think that's even a good idea. But as for the different NPCs in the town, all of these different NPCs can also have their own specialty. Like one can teach you how to anti-PK and bring you into a short little training session where it teaches you how to hit a vengeance at the correct time and how to go for a special attack at the correct time. There could also be—
I'm okay risking GP. I'm not okay risking something that takes me KC to get back. So if somebody kills me and it uncharges my PvP armor, I'm okay with that if they get my GP. If a main gets my GP when he comes and kills me. I'm not okay risking even a rune crossbow because now I got to go kill Chaos Fanatic 25 times to get it back. So that's where it sucks. So I might risk more if there was PvP gear. I'd risk more GP.
Be an NPC that teaches you how to correctly eat in PvP as well as correctly tank. Overall though, I think one of the best ways to get people to want to even learn how to PK is to give them a way to actually progress from beginner to at least somewhat decent PKer, and maybe even give them a little bit of GP in the process. It's not like that's even unheard of either, because LMS currently exists in the game and you can get anywhere from like 3 to 4 mil an hour if you're pretty good at it. I wouldn't even say you should necessarily get anywhere near that much, but incentivizing people to want to learn how to PK in a controlled environment like this and giving them a little bit of GP in the reward shop, I think would go a long way. I actually think adding a minigame like the Proving Grounds would make doing LMS a lot more enjoyable for a lot more players as well. Look, there are a lot of different aspects to PvP that I didn't even mention in this video, like RNG, gear balancing, PID, the different types of account builds that you can PK on, the different styles of PKing that you can do. The point being is that PvP in RuneScape is a very hefty subject. There's just so much depth to PvP in RuneScape, and with that in mind, it is one of the most fun things that I have done in any game. Which is why to me, it's very disheartening to see the current state that PvP is in. There's nothing better than getting a huge PK that has the chance to double or triple your bank or pay for that skill you wanted to train up. And it's just sad to me knowing that most players view that as an unrealistic aspect to their RuneScape journey or see it in a negative light. No other game has come close to PvP in RuneScape because it's so unique and, more importantly, can be so rewarding in every sense of the word. RuneScape in general has been getting better every year and is actually growing in player account. Jagex has done such a good job at trying to balance and complement every single aspect of the game with updates like Moon's Apparel. In fact, basically everything on Varlamore, new quests that introduce new items like While Gothic Sleeps, rebalancing skills to make them more fun to train, combat achievements that give you some pretty cool rewards by completing them, stackable clues, you name it, and Jagex has most likely done a phenomenal job with whatever that is. All that I'm asking Jagex to do is just consider doing that with PvP. There are a ton of talented JMods in this game and community members that I'm sure could come up with the perfect update to get new players to try PvP and learn it for themselves. PvP has been a part of RuneScape since the beginning, and it is something worth cherishing. And even if you used to care about PvP but you don't care now, or maybe you never cared about PvP, it's at least worth asking, is it worth giving PvP the chance to thrive like it used to once thrive? Maybe PvP is worth caring about. Maybe it's not, but either way, I am very appreciative that you sat here and listened to me talk about this. I also want to say thank you for giving me the chance to try out something new. If you like this type of video, I'll do in the future, but if you don't, I'll never do it again. I just love RuneScape, and I want to see every single aspect of it thrive. Overall, I think RuneScape is in an incredible spot. I mean, they've been making the game for 25 years. I am so lucky that I've been able to play this game that I love for the past 22 years of my life. And I'm hoping that I can play this game for the next 22 years of my life. It kind of makes me a dork, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, actually. I was just thinking that, framed. Guys, what did you think about this video? I thought it was pretty damn good. I liked a lot of the stuff he introduced, man. The training grounds, the proving grounds, could be a cook. There's already a lot of PvP. So let me just give you where I'm at with PvP. I've tried LMS. I'm not really interested in playing it anymore. I've never tried Bounty Hunter. I don't even know if I'm interested in trying it because nobody's told me like how I would benefit from doing that. in a way. Like, how would my Iron Man benefit from it? Framed introduced something in this video that I was interested in. I was interested in the PvP gear that I can pay gold to charge, and I can use that in the wilderness as an Iron Man. I thought that was a good idea. Like one of the first things I've been interested, besides getting the rune pouch from LMS or getting the imbued scroll from Amir's Arena. Like, I don't even know if I would have done Amir's Arena if they didn't have the imbued scroll there. So having those type of things, I mean, it gets people to try PvP, which is really cool. You're describing bounty hunter armor, bounty hunter on a main, not an iron. No, but I could lose that. I could lose that. If somebody PKs me in my bounty hunter armor, would I lose it? If I had like more than 3 pieces of it? Because what he's describing is you'd lose the charges or whatever that you have on it. You recharge it with GP. We got to understand the fundamental concept of why Iron Man cannot PK though. You stand alone. You cannot gain wealth from others. Even if it was an agreeable way, it would be abused. Yeah, there's nothing you can gain from an Iron Man. Iron Man, it's more for defense. It's like, what can I get to defend myself, or that's going to help me get KC faster from doing this PvP event or whatever. You know what I mean? That's where the incentives come in for an Iron Man. I'm so glad the game isn't built around Iron Man. Yeah, I think it's good to try and include everybody. I mean, I could still gain gold from killing them rather than items. If you are a main, if you are a PvP main, you probably love Iron Man because most of them are not trying to fight you back. Iron Men are free GP if you kill them. So I don't want to hear it from the mains. If you see me in the wilderness, I am free gold for you. So you should be damn happy that I'm playing the game. That's all I'm got to say about that. Still mad about the D pick, by the way. Yeah.